Hello and welcome to our second online lesson. I am Mr. Hoven and today we'll be continuing watching some of these online videos here in the classroom. In about a month or so we'll begin watching those at home for homework, but for right now we're going to keep working on the strategies for getting the information out of these videos and how to watch them effectively. So let's get started. So today we'll be covering artifacts and their importance, so how artifacts are used throughout history and used by historians and geographers. We'll be looking at primary and secondary sources, as well as different types of maps and the regions of the United States. But before we begin watching the rest of this video, we must remember that we have some certain guidelines that will help us get the most information possible from this video. So let's remember to read before we watch, stop frequently to make sure you know what you are looking for, and always rewind, re-listen, and rethink. So, Mr. Hoven in the classroom, please stop the video right now so the students have a chance to read through their worksheet and they know what they're going to be looking for the rest of the time here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started now. The first thing we're going to look at today are artifacts, and these are any object made by human beings of an earlier time or culture group that are often found at archaeological dig sites. And these were items that were made to make the humans' lives easier. And we're going to look at some of those examples of artifacts right now. So one type of artifact that a archaeologist or historian or geographer might find at a dig site would be tools or weaponry. And if you look at this slide, on the top left-hand corner you see a series of arrowheads. You also see to the right of that a bow and arrow that was used by Native Americans. Beneath that there are different types of needles and pins that were used, and these were created through animal bone, different stones, and things like that. And on the left, this is an artifact that was a suit of armor from ancient Sparta. If any of you have seen the movie 300, this is the type of armor that those soldiers wore. Another category of artifacts is pottery and artwork, and some of the most valuable artifacts in the world have been found right here in the United States at different dig sites of Native American tribes. So if you look here, you've got different types of pottery. You've also got a mask used by Native Americans. In the middle there, that is an Egyptian burial mask that was worn by the ancient pharaohs when they were buried, and it's made of gold and jade and all these precious materials. And that was something that was actually found at one of the dig sites. And on the far right, that is a series of Roman and Greek coins that have been unearthed at different sites. And before we move on, one of the interesting things that you don't have to be an archaeologist or historian to find some of these artifacts. This area, the Finger Lakes area, is well known for a lot of arrowhead findings. And in the fall and in the spring, if you live near a farm that plows fields, if you go out in that field after it's freshly plowed, you may have a good chance at finding some arrowheads or some other early stone tools used by Native Americans. So now that we've looked at some artifacts, let's move on to primary and secondary sources. Primary sources are records of events made by people who witnessed them. So these are records that are made or created by people who were actually there. They witnessed something happening. And these are usually found in the forms of letters, diaries, photographs, newspaper articles, and legal documents. These primary sources give accounts of events or things that have happened, but usually they're only just one perspective. So, for instance, if you're reading a diary of someone who was alive during the Civil War and they lived in the South, their perspective or how they feel about certain things may be very different than how people in the North would feel. So again, primary sources are made by people who witness these events, and they're usually... So the next type of source that we're going to be working with a lot this year are secondary sources, and these are accounts which draw from primary sources to explain a topic. So for example, in the picture you see there, it's a book about Abraham Lincoln, but it's written by George S. McGovern, and he wasn't alive during Lincoln's time, but he's writing a book about him using primary sources and different resources that he's found. So when we're looking at secondary sources, we're going to have to analyze these to make sure that they're giving a clear, accurate, and unbiased account of a topic or event. Because as we remember, primary sources just give one side or one person's perspective about an event. So now that we've looked at artifacts, primary sources, secondary sources, let's move on and do a little bit more with maps and mapping. There are three types of maps that we are going to be working with throughout this year and next year. They are physical maps, political maps, and thematic maps. Physical maps show the geographic characteristics of a region or place. For example, mountains, lakes, rivers, plains. So if you look at the picture there of the United States, that is a physical map. And you can see on the western seaboard all of the mountains, and in between, and kind of in the middle of the country, the Great Plains. And on the eastern seaboard, you can see the Great Lakes. You can see also some of the rivers too. So the physical maps show geographic characteristics of a place. And political maps, these show borders and boundaries between states and countries, or within countries. So here you see all the different boundaries within the states of the U.S., and these are what are known as political maps. And finally, thematic maps are maps that show things like natural resources, industrial areas, populations, etc. These are maps that are based on a theme, and that could be one of the categories I just mentioned. So if we look at this map of Louisiana, it shows the natural resources map that is there. So you can see oil, you can see the different types of crops, cattle, it looks like there's chicken as well, there's fish on the coast, and there's seafood. So these are the types of products that are naturally occurring or grown in Louisiana that can be exported or can be used by people to survive. So as we're beginning to wrap this lesson up, let's quickly look at the regions of the United States. Now, we've mentioned quite a few of these regions already, and I just want to use this as kind of a refresher so that we're aware of what they are, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about each one. So, the Northeast is where we live. It's the northeastern part of the United States. Very simple. The Southeast, again, south of us, containing states like Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. Then you've got the Southwest, Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona. The West itself, so California, Oregon, and Washington, and among other states. And then you have the Midwest, so the middle part of the country, and that's where a lot of the crops are grown. So that'll about wrap things up for today. We'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. See you later.